Nobody goes down there. That was the first thing they told Marcus when he arrived at Greystone Boys' Home in Savannah, Georgia. Not a rule written on any wall, not a policy in any handbook, just a fact delivered the way people deliver facts they do not want to explain. Nobody goes down there. Marcus was 17 years old. He had been in the system long enough to know that when adults said something like that without explaining why, it meant something happened down there, something they wanted everyone to forget. He nodded when they told him. He said, "Okay," and he started counting the days until he could find out for himself. Greystone Boys' Home was a 3-story building on the edge of the historic district in Savannah, Georgia, old and tall and made of dark stone that looked almost black when it rained. The building had been many things before it became a boys' home: a private school, a Civil War-era medical facility, a privately owned residence for a family nobody in Savannah talked about anymore. Now it was this: 23 boys, 3 floors, and a basement that nobody went down to. The building sat behind a row of old oak trees draped in Spanish moss that moved in the Savannah wind like something breathing. The iron fence around the property was tall and black and old, and the gate at the front had the habit of swinging open in the middle of the night. The staff said it was the wind. Marcus had been there 3 weeks, and he had already stopped believing most of what the staff said. He was tall for 17, broad through the shoulders, light brown skin, sharp eyes that missed very little. He had a habit of going quiet when other people got loud, and loud when other people went quiet. It had gotten him in trouble more than once in more than one placement. He had been at 6 different homes since he was 9 years old. He knew the patterns. Every home had a version of the same cast of characters: the staff member who was actually kind, and the staff member who was kind only when someone was watching, the boy who ran things among the residents, and the boy who everyone pretended not to see, the room that was always too cold, and the explanation that was never quite right. Greystone had all of these, but it also had the basement, and the basement was different. He first noticed it because of the smell. 3 days after arriving, he was walking through the ground floor hallway near the back of the building late in the evening, and he smelled something. Cold, damp, old, like earth and stone, and something underneath both of those things that he could not name. He followed it to a door at the end of the ground floor hallway. Plain wooden door, nothing remarkable about it except that it had 2 separate locks, a standard door lock and a heavy deadbolt above it. 2 locks on a basement door in a boys' home. He stood there and looked at those 2 locks for a long time. Then he went to dinner and did not say anything to anyone. He asked about it casually 3 days later. He was sitting with a boy named Errol, who had been at Greystone for 2 years and who had the particular quality of knowing more than he said. Marcus said, "So what is in the basement?" Errol stopped chewing. He looked at Marcus. He said, "Who told you about the basement?" Marcus said, "Nobody. I saw the door." Errol was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "They told you when you arrived, right? Nobody goes down there." Marcus said, "Yeah." Errol said, "Then you already know what you need to know." Marcus said, "That is not an answer." Errol looked at him. He said, "2 years ago, a boy named Terrell asked the same question you were asking." Marcus said, "What happened to him?" Errol picked up his fork again. He said, "He left Greystone about a week after he started asking." Marcus said, "Left how?" Errol said, "The way boys leave here sometimes. No goodbye, no warning, just gone one morning." He said his bed was made and his things were still there, and the staff said he had been transferred to another facility. He said nobody believed that. Nobody said so out loud, but nobody believed that. Marcus sat with that for a moment. Then he said, "Has anyone actually been down there?" Errol was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Once."
He said about a year ago he woke up in the middle of the night and heard something coming from below the floor of his room. He said it sounded like dragging, something heavy being dragged across a stone floor. He said it went on for about 10 minutes and then stopped. He said the next morning he looked at the ground floor hallway and the door to the basement had a new scratch on it, at the bottom of the door, on the inside, like something had been trying to get out. Marcus looked at him. Errol said, "I have not asked any questions since then." He said, "I suggest you do the same." Marcus went back to his room that night and lay on his bed and thought about everything Errol had said. He thought about the 2 locks. He thought about the smell. He thought about a scratch on the inside of a basement door. He thought about a boy named Terrell who asked questions and disappeared. He stared at the ceiling, and from somewhere below him, from the floor beneath his bed, he heard it. A single sound, low, slow, like something shifting its weight in the dark below. He did not move. He barely breathed. He lay completely still and listened. The sound did not repeat, but it had been there. He had heard it, and now he could not unhear it. He spent the next 4 days watching the basement door. Not obviously, not in a way that anyone would notice. He was careful about how he watched things. He always had been. He watched who had keys to that door. He watched who went near it and who stayed away from it. Most of the staff walked past it without looking at it, the way people walk past things they have trained themselves not to see. But one staff member was different, a man named Mr. Holt. Mr. Holt was the night supervisor at Greystone. 50s, heavyset, gray at the temples, quiet in a way that felt less like calm and more like suppression, like a man holding something down with both hands at all times. Marcus watched Mr. Holt on the first night. At 11:30, after all the boys were in their rooms, Mr. Holt walked the ground floor. He checked the front door, he checked the back door, he checked the side windows, and then he walked to the basement door. He stood in front of it. He put his hand flat against the wood. He stood there with his palm pressed against the wood for almost a full minute, not unlocking it, not opening it, just standing there with his palm pressed against the wood, his head slightly bowed, like he was listening or like he was apologizing. Then he walked away. Marcus watched this happen the same way 3 nights in a row. Same time, same routine, same hand on the door, same bowed head. On the 4th night, Marcus got close enough to see Mr. Holt's face while he stood at the door, and what he saw there was not the face of a man doing a security check. It was the face of a man in pain. Marcus went back to his room. He sat on the edge of his bed. He made a decision. That night at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the building was completely silent, he got up, he put on his clothes, he walked down to the ground floor, he walked to the basement door. He stood in front of it. He could smell it immediately, that cold, damp earth smell mixed with something else now that he was close, something almost metallic. He looked at the 2 locks, the standard lock and the heavy deadbolt above. He had been at 6 homes. He had learned things along the way, things that people who grew up in normal houses never needed to learn. He reached into his pocket. He had prepared for this. He knelt in front of the standard lock first. It took him 3 minutes. The lock turned. He stood up and looked at the deadbolt. Deadbolts were harder. He worked at it for 7 minutes. His hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. The deadbolt slid back. He put his hand on the door handle. He stood there for a moment. The smell coming through the door now was stronger, cold and deep and old. He turned the handle. He pushed the door open. The darkness beyond it was absolute. He turned his flashlight. Stone steps going down, narrow. The walls on either side, raw stone and old brick. The ceiling low. He went down, 1 step at a time. The temperature dropped with every step. By the time he reached the bottom, he could see his breath in the flashlight beam. The basement was one large room, stone floor, stone walls, stone ceiling, old iron shelving units along both walls, empty now, but old, rusted, a drain in the center of the floor, a single chain hanging from the ceiling with no bulb at the end, and in the far corner, a wall that was different from the others. The other 3 walls were raw stone, old and dark and continuous, but the far wall was brick, newer brick that did not match the age of everything else in the building. He pressed his palm against it. The brick was cold, but from behind it, very faint, almost below the threshold of hearing, he could feel something, a vibration, not mechanical, not the building settling, something rhythmic, like breathing. He stepped back from the wall, his heart